All right, and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and also Game Source. We thank you so much for listening to all of our great shows. And I'll tell you what, there's a big week ahead for the Lakers once again. At least we now know what the Lakers are headed to as far as what's going on with the rest of their season, because the NBA announced schedules for all of the teams that are still left that are going to Orlando. And there's some very interesting matchups. Not sure I'm liking it as far as what's going on and what I see. But there's the challenge will be difficult for the Lakers. But we're going to be talking about that here in a sec and a whole bunch more. But here with me today is always on one of our early parts of our week as far as our show is concerned. He's a good man indeed. You got to check out what he's doing today at Lakerholics.net and be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.net. It's the guy who runs it, the guy who's behind it all. It is Tom Wong. I know him as, but you know him as LakerTom. And LakerTom, thanks for stopping by once again.
Hey, Gerald, how you doing? I'm looking forward to this podcast. It looks like we're really going to see some basketball. I know there's a lot of naysayers who are thinking that we're not going to be able to pull it off, and that it's going to fall prey to the coronavirus pandemic. But I'm pretty confident that things are going to go through, and I think I'm actually encouraged by the small number of people that were tested positive of the players, by the Players Association and the league owners coming together and all supporting Adam Silver's plan. I even saw Dr. Fauci came out and said that, boy, it looks like a plan that's really well put together and has as good a chance as anything to really give us a shot at seeing professional sports in this climate of the pandemic. So I'm excited about the prospect of watching Laker games again, and we're almost like 1 month away from the first game. So
I'm excited. June 30th is the deal. June 30th against the Clippers. The NBA set the schedules out for the Lakers and the rest of the teams going forward in Orlando. And I'm telling you what right now, Tom, it's going to be something that's very interesting. Not exactly loving the way the NBA distributed these games, because the Lakers were dealt with what is looking on paper as the third hardest and third most difficult schedule of the NBA teams. Not exactly liking that, but it is something what we have to do. It is what it is. It's out there, and I'll give everybody the rundown right now. It starts off July 30th against the Clippers, August 1st against Toronto, August 3rd against the Jazz, August 5th against Oklahoma City. On August 6th, it's the Rockets. August 8th, it's the Pacers. August 10th, it's the Nuggets. And August 13th, it's at a time to be determined, but August 13th, it's at the Kings. Virtually all the games will either be on NBA TNT, ESPN, or it'll also be on the Lakers network as well. But no one said this is going to be easy. I look at the Bucks schedule, which looks really cake, comparatively speaking, and the race for the overall top record, which was looking a lot better for the Lakers at the time of the coronavirus, is now looking a little bit more difficult. But then again, the Lakers might just be in want to go ahead and win a couple games, just get the Western Conference top seed, and we'll go from there, because really there's no more full home court, full playoff home court advantage to worry about at this point. So you might just be worried about just going ahead and, again, winning the top spot in the West, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, the top spot in the West is probably going to be an opportunity to play the Pelicans.
Well, that's something I also want to talk to you about as well. I mean, I'm not 100% sold on that, because, yes, the Pelicans still have one of the easiest schedules as far as what's left over. I mean, they were having the easiest schedule, period, when it came to the rest of the season as the coronavirus hit. Their schedule still looks easier than virtually anyone else, but I'm not convinced 100% that they're going to go ahead and be that team the Lakers match up against as the 8th seed. I'm not discounting Portland, which will have almost full health coming back as far as the team is concerned.
But a tough schedule, a very tough schedule too.
Very tough schedule, but they'll be very motivated. And some of these top teams, again, because it's not a home court advantage that they have to be worried really about, it's just positioning that they're going to be looking into. Okay, we maybe match up better than this team than this team, so maybe we will go ahead and lose a couple, or maybe go ahead and win a couple more and try hard, and maybe not. I think there's going to be just worry about positioning against the teams you think you match up better against. That's what I think it's going to go ahead and do. It's not like you're playing for a home court or anything, so I think that's important. So a team like Portland could really take advantage of that and finish out the season strong. I'm not discounting them. I wouldn't even discount the Sacramento Kings, who are also who are also 3.5 games back. So let's not discount them. Their schedule doesn't look that bad as well. I mean, they'll be facing off against the Pelicans at least twice, and they've got some other games that they can win. So I'm not going to discount either Portland or Sacramento at this point. I just think that you're giving it to New Orleans a little bit too early.
Well, I think that it almost seems to me that the entire construction of the 22-team play-in tournament was really designed with one purpose intent, and that is to get Zion Williamson into the playoffs. You look at how they're doing it and all of the opportunities, which teams they've given and where they've drawn the lines and so forth, the way the schedules turned out and such. And to a certain extent, the league is doing everything they can to make sure that they get as much revenue as possible from this season restart. Nobody knows what it's going to be like when you hit to December and we're supposed to start the 2020-21 season. So a lot is riding on the players being able to go out there and stay healthy, the league being able to make this bubble idea work right in the heart of, one of the states that has most new cases of coronavirus. So it's a challenge and one that is really critical to the league surviving, I think. We all know, and we've talked about it in the previous episodes, that the worst thing that can happen is if the league has to pull the plug on the season and doesn't have an opportunity to go out there and finish the playoffs and take care of business and hit the 70-game plateau, at least for 22 teams, 22 of the 30 teams. If they don't do that, it's going to be really a heavy possibility that we're going to end up with the league calling force majeure and canceling voiding the CBA. And then that throws everything into a traumatic situation that we don't want to see. Personally, what I find fascinating is that when you look at the 22 games playoff schedule and forgetting what motivations might have been there to really get Zion into the playoffs, when you eliminate 8 teams, being the Hornets, the Pistons, the Cavs, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Bulls, and you knock those teams out of the schedule, and the Lakers had several games against those guys. So all of a sudden you consolidate the Lakers schedule. So they're playing 8 pretty tough games, and a lot of the teams are finding that, when you drop off the bottom 8 teams, all of a sudden the competitiveness of every one of these games, every one of the 8 games that each of these teams is going to play to finish off the 2019-20 regular season, are going to be much more attractive games than you would have had if they'd gone ahead and finished out the season. And I think that is going to be a very important factor in how much attendance we get for the games. In fact, it's something that we'll talk about later in the podcast. I even think it sets the table for some possibilities that we may see similar type of situation next year, where we get a better quality product on the floor. One of the problems, besides the China controversy created by Daryl Morey and the financial problems created by the suspension of the season due to coronavirus. One of the problems the NBA had was a lack of TV ratings, and primarily because of the quality of the matchups. Every professional sport is suffered from this the last few years to a certain extent, simply because they've got a watered down product because there are too many teams that are always losing. I mean, who wants to go and see? I know during the year when I'd watch games in an 82 game season, there's a lot of games against teams like the Charlotte Hornets and so forth that I'll end up watching a movie with my wife and then coming back and replaying parts of the game and fast forwarding through it. And it just doesn't have the intensity that you get when you got a great matchup. Looking at the Lakers schedule, I mean, my God, we start on July 30th against the Clippers. I mean, what more could you want as to a basketball fan that is looking for competition? And I hear all of the critics yelling, gimmick, we don't want to do these gimmicks and so forth. And then I look back at the All-Star game. They changed the rules of the All-Star game, and it was the best damn All-Star game we've seen. That whole idea that you had these great players going out there and playing their hearts out in the fourth quarter of that game was just something sensational to see. It's what you want to see as a fan. And so I'm really excited about the last 8 games. And I think that the league needs to really think hard next season about how they can increase the quality of the matchups. And there are ways to do that that are done in other professional leagues around the world, that are done in the AAU and in college basketball even, where you've got Division I, Division II, 3 and 4, and so forth. But there's something to be said about making sure that the quality of the product that we're selling to the American public, the viewing public, the people, the ratings that drive those big TV contracts, to get the quality of those games up and the quality of those matchups up, to really help the league regain a lot of the financial losses that it's going to suffer as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. So I'm looking forward to those 8 games. I didn't think I'd be looking forward to the end of the season the way that I am. But it's not just the Lakers games. There's some other just terrific matchups on the Pelicans versus some of these teams that are fighting for that last playoff spot is really going to be fascinating. And there's going to be a lot of games that I would probably watch now. And I'm normally a fan that, I think as your life gets more complicated and there are more competition for your eyes and different things you can do and so forth, and you got all these family obligations. I'm a diehard Yankee fan that can't watch 162 baseball games. I'm a diehard Laker fan that probably isn't going to watch 82 games start to finish. There's just too many other things going on in my life and with my family and so forth. But boy, I'm not going to miss a game like a game Lakers against the Clippers or Lakers against the Rockets or the Mavericks or the Trailblazers. Those are going to be just terrific games to finish off the season. The other side of it is I think that a lot of people were sort of complaining because, oh man, the Lakers got a raw deal here where they got such a tough schedule because you pulled out all of those weak teams and we had a whole handful of them coming in over the next 8 games. Well, the truth of the matter is I think that this is a benefit for the Lakers. The last thing you want to do is to go into the playoffs not playing your best basketball. And the only way you can get into gear to be playing your best basketball is to be playing against teams that are challenging you. And some of these teams are going to have a lot to go for, the Pelicans, the Mavericks, the Trailblazers. They're all going to be coming at the Lakers knowing that they have a chance to get into the playoffs. And they're going to be bringing their best. Not that every team doesn't always seem to bring their best out when it's the LA Lakers that are on the court against them. But I think we're going to see some really hard competitive games. And I expect the Lakers, maybe they'll coast the last 2 games against the Nuggets and Thunders because it's almost impossible for the Clippers to overtake them. And as you said earlier in your opening, there's no home court advantage. So all we're really talking about is pride and developing momentum as you head into the playoffs. Nobody wants to go into playoffs playing like a dud. And I think the Lakers are going to come out of this really full-born storming out to want to enter the playoffs winning 6 or 7 or 8 of those 8 games.
Well, going after the top spot overall is going to be very difficult and challenging.
Yeah.
Once you look at what Milwaukee's going to be doing, and Milwaukee's got such an easier schedule comparatively speaking. Some of the winners and losers. I mean, obviously the Lakers, if you want to look at that, but have a harder task to go to in this last 8 games. But they should, by seeing it, they should be able to take enough of them that it shouldn't be a difference. And there's no way they're going to give up that 5.5 game lead. As far
they go 4-4, and the Clippers could win all 8, and they're still going to.
Yeah.
And and for the Bucks, the only reason that we would have wanted to overtake the Bucks in the regular season had they continued to the 82 game schedule is home court advantage. And that doesn't matter now at all.
No, it doesn't. But some of the teams that I think are winners and losers in this, Milwaukee's a winner with an easier schedule. I think Memphis is looking rather difficult, and you're right. If the league in and of itself is trying to slant it towards a Zion LeBron matchup, it certainly is there in the offering as far as the schedule is concerned, because Memphis' schedule is looking on paper to be a little bit more difficult than what I see that the Pelicans are doing. But I don't want to underestimate the Kings, and I don't want to underestimate the Portland Trailblazers and their road, because their road, yes, Portland looks a little bit tougher, but then again, they're at full strength. So, they went to the conference finals last year, and this is a team that has a lot of pride in what you're saying, and they could easily go on a hot streak if Damian Lillard has the kind of support that he now may have once they get back to Orlando.
Sure, the more that we talk about it, the thing that jumps out at me, Gerald, is how good these games are going to be.
Yeah,
and it's going to be strange watching some of them at like 11 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon, because I guess they're going to play these slates of games and is it 3 arenas? Do you have the details on that?
There's 3 arenas. I believe 2 of them are going to be set up for national TV, from what I'm understanding. So it looks like something that is going to be very well thought out by the league on that sense. But yeah, I'm still concerned overall as far as what the impact coronavirus may have over this. I'm hoping that the environment will be controlled enough to where that it will be not a major factor in how the season ends up going forward. I'm hopeful for the health and safety of the players, first and foremost, and their families once the first round of the playoffs gets concluded. So that's my first concern, is for them and their safety and their health. And I think that you're right. It looks like more like they're trying to lean towards the Pelicans. But then again, it's actually could have been easier for the Pelicans because they had a lot of even
they had an easy schedule going.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
how long is the 8 games? How much time is played for the 8 games before they finish out the regular season?
Well, you're talking about July 30th to around August 14th, August 13th, in that area. So
like 2 weeks, basically.
Basically, a little over 2 weeks. So it looks like it's going to be something that it's going to take place rather quickly. There is going to be a couple back-to-backs in there for some of these teams, so be prepared for that. There is one back-to-back for the Lakers, August 5th and August 6th. So again, it all depends on where the Lakers are at in the standings, whether or not they can go into cruise control or not, and rest players up for the playoff run, get some other people into the mix, like a Dion Waiters or a Markieff Morris, get them more into, shape, get them some minutes, get them to play with the rest of the team as far as a little bit more, so get more experience working with the team. If they do get J.R. Smith and do bring him on, you want to go ahead and see exactly if they can go ahead and how much does he have left in the tank, and see how much he has left, if that's possible. So you want to see if he can contribute on the team, if he gets brought onto the team, because as of this recording, he's not been officially brought onto the team. So there's a lot of factors that could weigh into it.
Now they got to figure out how to replace Avery Bradley.
And that's a big key. That's
going to be a big key of seeing where those minutes are going to go to. I also think too that there's Morris is a big factor because of just the need to And it looks like Dwight Howard. I mean, it's kind of strange. The rules have sort of been twisted around because we all thought that there was a
24th.
deadline, but now
Well,
it appears.
Well, the 24th is the deadline, I guess, now that for getting another player, because this is that time frame when you can sign another player.
Right.
But actually, the first is when you can tell the
turn in your roster.
Yeah. So that's when you can tell teams officially whether you're going or staying. It's just right. The closer you get to the first,
Right.
the closer you cannot do anything to replace a player
Right.
with. That's
I guess the 24th was a deadline if you were going to opt out for some medical reason or some reason like that. Because it's interesting, Dwight has not announced that he's staying. I think he is, and everybody seems to be under the impression he is. So we'll just have to hope. I think basically, and then also what's kind of strange is the Lakers have not announced that JR is coming. And you hear various other rumors, so there's still a possibility of that happening. And then, so I agree with you that the only other motive in those 8 games, other than getting some momentum going, is figuring out exactly how the new guys are going to fit in, who's going to play to replace Bradley's minutes, and so forth. You brought up the whole issue of the coronavirus, and we're seeing, around the nation now, 48 of the 50 states, there's only 2 states of the 50 states where the coronavirus numbers are declining. And so we've seen an explosion that has really sort of undermined a lot of the optimism that the NBA is going to pull off this entire bubble thing. And I think one of the things everybody's got to realize when you think about the bubble is it's not a static bubble, it's a decreasing bubble. You're starting off with 22 teams and you're going to go 2 weeks. You make it through those 2 weeks without some major players testing positive and so forth, and all of a sudden you're down to 16. You run another 2 weeks and you're down to 8. So if we get through the month of July, the month of August, where we're probably down to the Elite 8, if you will, I think by then you're talking about having 1/3 of the number of people in the bubble, which is going to make it a lot easier to control. And if players can at least hold out and make that first 30 days without doing dumb things, then I think you're going to narrow it down to where you've got 8 teams where the guys are pretty damn serious that, hey, we're one of the top 8 teams left. We have a chance to win a championship. We're not going to go out and do stupid things and risk that. And we're going to, they'll be a lot more motivated to stay inside of the bubble and not to make dumb mistakes and not to become lackadaisical the way that a good portion of the country, has become, so that all of a sudden we're back in this problem. So I think that's something important to look at, that while that bubble is sitting there in the middle of the heart of the pandemic in Florida, it's going to have an easier job the further we get along in the playoffs. And once we get through August, I'm pretty confident that if nothing happens to deter that situation and undermine the entire idea and force Adam Silver to do something he doesn't want to do, if we get past that month of August, I think that we're pretty much safe home.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's something to still look at when it concerns the first and who might actually be saying yay or nay going to Orlando. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, I've noticed that there really has not been that many players that are deciding to stay home as of this recording. Just a few players, and there's usually just some type of reasonable contingency. I mean, we saw with Avery Bradley, he's got a great concern for his 6-year-old son because of health issues, which is, like I said, some before when I was talking to Rafael Barlow of the NBA Draft Junkies, that is something very respectable, because as someone who has a daughter with a similar condition, I completely understand. Davis Bertans, he's staying home because he's had 2 ACL surgeries, and
he's up for a big contract.
He's up for the biggest contract. And what was bad is that Evan Fournier, and I was listening to a podcast on this, who currently this year makes more than Davis Bertans has ever made in his career, go and single him out on Twitter, because Twitter's the place to do that. and pick on him for his decision. But if you're playing on a team with almost zero chance of getting into the playoffs, and you have this big payday on the horizon for you, I don't blame him at all for that.
Yeah.
And then you
Just
have
look at Boogie. That's all you got to do, man.
Yeah, and then you have Trevor Ariza, who has some custody issues he has to take care of. Virtually all these reasons that for these players, which is a very small amount of players that are currently, as of this point in time, not going to Orlando. It's just they're very valid reasons. But I'm just surprised at the lack of number of players, which is a good thing for the league, which is a good thing for fans. Tell me in your own reasons why you think that is, where all these players that, as you saw just a couple weeks ago, were very concerned. There was a lot of tension about going. A lot of these players are still going as of this point to Orlando.
I think there's two main reasons that I see that. I think the first is that the league has done a good job of really listening to the players' concerns that we're at a transcendental moment in history, especially for Black athletes and the Black Lives Matter movement. And the league has really embraced doing everything they can to give the players a platform on which they can speak out politically. And I think that Danny Green had a great bunch of quotes that were in the news today, and he was talking about the fact that he can understand and appreciate how everybody is concerned about the movement, and that this is the time to be selfless and to think about your fellow players and your other people in your community who have been basically suppressed for 400 years. And is that not more important than going out and playing a game of basketball? Well, that's one way of looking at it. But the second way that Green was looking at it is, man, the NBA is doing a terrific job of giving us everything we could ask for so that we can go on the biggest platform that's going to be around, which is the NBA Finals, the NBA playoffs, and we can support it. They're going to even allow us to put what we want on the back of the jerseys instead of the names. There's all of these things. We talked before on one of the earlier episodes about all of the moves that the NBA could make in order to eliminate that objection that players might have a better way of supporting Black Lives Matter by not playing. Well, the NBA has done a good job making sure that they have given the tools to the players to take advantage of all of the media and of the platform that they have with the playoffs and everything. I think that's one big factor why you don't see a lot of players backing out.
Well, that's good.
The second thing is money. It's simple. I mean, it's not only just your salary for the rest of the year. It's also possibly your salary for next year, because if the CBA gets crushed, then everything is up in the air. So I think, like you've said before, money is the big driver of this whole thing. You cannot deny that. It's what makes the world go round, and the players realize that too. They're investing not only in themselves as players and their own careers, but in the league that has given them the opportunity to make this kind of money. The third thing is, these guys are the best 300 basketball players in the world. And they got that way because they have a drive to win. Every one of these guys, I mean, you hear the comments say, so-and-so is buckets. Every one of these guys is buckets. Don't kid yourself. I mean, they're so damn good at their sport and their craft and the effort that they make and the talent that they have. You even see the players now, the 8 teams that aren't going to be in this thing, they're lobbying now for the league to set up a second bubble so that they can play. Now, obviously, money is part of that. Those 8 teams want to get to their 70-game limit so they can collect on their own TV contracts, and the players want to get their money. They don't want to miss out on on a third of the season's pay, if you will. But there's also that sort of pride that, hey, give us a chance to play too. Let's have our own little mini tournament. Everybody's coming up with gimmicks and ways to get it out there and have the games go on. And then there's just maybe a fourth factor that the country needs it. We need something. We need sports. when you look at the things that we're missing, they're postponing all of the major movie events until the theaters open again. There's no sports to watch anywhere. We have YouTubed and, gone back on so many different things, and we have discussed ad nauseum everything that you could possibly discuss to keep the conversations going. So the real reality is that the country is overdue for sports. And if we're going to be stuck back into another shelter-at-home period, which looks inevitable considering the way that the coronavirus is expanding everywhere that we look, man, it would be great to have some basketball to watch. And so I think that there's it's a perfect storm of things and reasons why. And then throw on top of it, only 5% of the players tested positive. And that 5% have more than enough time to recover so that they can play too. So why not? They've got a good plan in place. The NBA, like Dr. Fauci said, has done everything they can with a focus of protecting the players and the coaches and the staffs that are going to be involved in resurrecting the season. So let's go for it. And I think that they're going to be successful on it. And I'm looking forward to, I've been doing a lot of binge watching and binge reading and so forth. I'm looking for some binge basketball. I could easily sit down and watch 6 hours, 7, 8 hours straight of NBA basketball for the whole week, no problem, or 2 weeks until we finish that 8-game series. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm going to watch more games in, and I'm going to set my calendar aside, eliminate everything else off the calendar, and just watch basketball.
But one of the things that is clearly said by Adam Silver is that if it gets problematic as far as the coronavirus is concerned, whether it's just to one team or whether it's starts spreading out over amongst a series of teams, he is said already on record that he's not going to hesitate to put the kibosh on the rest of the season. He's willing to go ahead and cancel it if it becomes very problematic. And I credit him for that, at least the fact that, yes, right now, as you said or what you read in Eric Pincus's article about, they're playing for the money, and that's a great part of this. But still, Adam Silver has said that he's not going to risk the player's safety and health to the point where it gets too problematic. I mean, there's going to be a point in time if the coronavirus spreads throughout this bubble that he's just going to have to call it a day.
Well, you hope that, sometimes it gets kind of scary when you think about the fact of how many people in the White House and that, which we would expect to be the most protected bubble that we have around, how close that got to the president and vice president. But I think I think we learned a lot of lessons about that situation. And as I said before, I think that as the bubble decreases, as the number of teams reduces as you go through the playoffs, then your chances of continuing to increase. So August is going to be a tough month. August is probably going to very well see some of the highest number of case counts that we've ever seen. And Florida, basically, you got a lot of reason to believe that we're nowhere near the peak of what's going to happen with the coronavirus thing. So I give Adam Silver credit for being able to pull the plug. He's not going to pull a Donald Trump, if you will. If things get bad enough that he has to do something, he's going to do something. I wish our president would at least put a goddamn mask on and be a leader and show people that he really cares about things rather than politicizing. We're the only country in the entire world that has politicized the coronavirus.
Well, let's not politicize this podcast anymore.
Fair enough.
Stay on the Lakers, so stay focused on the Lakers. And one of the things I want to talk about is, okay, you seem to pretty much have it as a done deal that the Lakers are going to have a first-round matchup with the Pelicans, and so many others are. I mean, so many others are pointing out to a Zion-LeBron matchup in the first round just because of the way that the schedules are set out for the rest of the season.
That's because I think the Pelicans are an awfully good team.
They are. I still think they have some holes, but yep. I still think that they have a lot of talent. I don't know if all those pieces fit 100%, but they have like a lot of talent. And that's something that is going to have to be remedied, I think, over the next couple of years so that the Pelicans can even go to a notch higher is what pieces fit around Zion and what pieces do not fit as well, even though they may be very talented. And you're going to have to sort those things out. But I will say that let's, for all intents and purposes, say that the Lakers do have a matchup against the Pelicans.
What before we even get there, what is the remind me again how close do they have to be in order to have a playoff?
I believe it's 4 games. I believe it's 4 games.
And
I
aren't
thought
they
it was 2, but
it's 3.5? Where are they now? 3.5 back?
Them, the Portland Trailblazers, and the Sacramento Kings are all 3.5 right now.
So it's whichever team is closest, as long as it's within 4, gets to have that
2 game.
They got to beat them twice where they can lose only once.
Yes.
So it's interesting because it could be, maybe we'd have a turn of events where it's possible that the Portland Trailblazers could be number 8 and the Pelicans could be number 9. And Memphis slid out of that situation.
And it could also be very possible.
The Pelicans could be number 8 and have a chance to only have to beat somebody twice.
I'm still thinking that Memphis is going to be the 8th seed because, I mean, Portland it's got my money if any team's going to slide in there. To be honest with you, I think they're a little bit more. I think they will be a little bit more ready to go ahead and make a push than the Pelicans will. But I still think that the advantage is really, really much in favor of Memphis. Because remember, you also, again,
3.5 games is a nice lead.
Yeah.
You're only playing 8 games.
Yeah, the Pelicans, the Kings, and the Trailblazers all have to play extremely well. Plus, the Grizzlies have to lose a lot in that 8-game stretch.
Yep.
Plus, would also have to lose 2 straight in the playing games just to match up against whoever is leading the West, which we are pretty much at this time going to say is the Lakers.
Yep.
So that's a tall task, my friend. That's a tall task. But okay, let's
look at that series, though. There's an interesting aspect about, let's say the Grizzlies are number 8 and the Pelicans move up to number 9, and they have their little, 2 or 1 game, the little play-in tournament there.
I'll humor you. Let's go with the Pelicans. Let's go with the Pelicans. So, do you think
we got John Morant there is a very underrated player as far as I'm concerned.
And the best defender on him in Avery Bradley is not there. I get that.
But it's going to be an interesting situation because I do think also that the Grizzlies are. Everybody has sort of assumed that the Grizzlies aren't going to make it, simply because they expect the Pelicans or the Blazers to overtake them. Because in a long full season, your expectation would not have been for Memphis to have been able to hang around and hold on to a playoff situation. So that'll be interesting to see because you'll have Zion. If Zion has an opportunity in 8 games to become the first rookie of the year to play the fewest number of games,
he's not going to win it. John Morant is too far ahead. Sorry. No matter how many TV games he gets, John Morant is just too far ahead. But a matchup against
a head-to-head matchup could be interesting.
You're missing one thing when it concerns this matchup against the Pelicans, and that is AD. AD, after the way he left New Orleans, and I'm going to say this, he is not going to go ahead and lose face over this. He will not allow the Pelicans to win that series. Besides, I don't think Zion is ready to go ahead and match up defensively against him. And I think that would be a problem for him. The Lakers can throw enough size to at least slow down Zion a little bit, but there's nobody to match up against AD. AD has had his way in every game this year against New Orleans, and I don't see anything different in a matchup against him.
Okay, so we're moving on to the Pelicans and Lakers then, right?
Well, I still think it's going to be the Grizzlies, but I said I'm humoring you.
Okay, so let's say if it's, I tend to agree with you 100%. I think that, in fact, I actually think that the Lakers would probably prefer to play the Pelicans than any of the other 6 teams that are going to make the playoffs in the West. The Pelicans is, even though everybody talks about how threatening they could be with all of that young talent and with Zion, peaking and showing that he deserves Rookie of the Year and so forth. It still comes down to the fact that the Lakers have 2 superstars who I think are going to be, we're going to see a version of playoff LeBron and playoff Anthony that are going to be enough to carry the Lakers through. I don't think the Lakers are even going to have, I don't even think they're going to go to a 7th game in any of the series to win the championship this year, assuming everybody's healthy and the coronavirus doesn't derail the entire bubble. So I'm not worried about the Pelicans. I think they'll take the Pelicans in 5. I think they'll take the Grizzlies in 5, maybe 4.
Well, I think that of the matchups, it would be Portland. I think that would be the most problematic for
Portland. Would be the toughest of the 3 matchups, simply because they got a great guard who is ultimately confident and has shown that he can do it against the Lakers.
Yes, so that would be the one that would
name something to one scary dude on the court, man.
Yeah. But the Lakers have shown that they can handle the Portland Trailblazers, but vice versa. I mean, in the Kobe Memorial game that they had, he went off and was the main reason why that they beat the Lakers. So it's going to be interesting to see as we get closer, and especially getting into those games, the 8 games that are going to be played, exactly how that's going to work itself out. But I'm still thinking that the Grizzlies have a little bit too much of a cushion.
And that cushion counts. I mean, you're talking. Don't even know you. The other thing is, I haven't even looked at the fact that what's different about the finish for the ranking of who's going to play 8th and 9th and so forth is they're going on percentages. They're not going on games behind and so forth. So it's the win-loss percentage, which I haven't looked at myself to see who has the advantage on that. I'm looking at the schedule, but I mean, you've got some teams that are pretty close in there, Portland is 4. Okay, so it's 4 games in the loss column. The Grizzlies are really ahead 4 games in the loss column over the Trailblazers and just 3 games in the loss column over the Pelicans. So the Trailblazers really rank number 9th right now on percentage basis. So it's going to be interesting.
And the Kings right after that.
Yeah. But boy, that, I have to say, earlier in the year when we had our various conversations about all of the talk about a play-in tournament and so forth, I was basically always against the play-in tournament. But I have to admit now that looking at the way that they've structured it, it could be pretty exciting. And obviously I don't think in a regular season that, we're seeing a lot of things that could become templates for how next season could go, because the league is going to want to have better matchups, especially on the TV contracts and so forth, because all of a sudden you can't have drops in TV ratings if you're not going to have fans in the stands. You got to make that money up somewhere. And so you got to find a way to really get the eyes around the world watching every game. And the big criteria for that is you just can't have any dud matchups. And we had a lot of them on ABC and TNT and so forth this last year. So it's, it'll be very interesting to see. And I mean, you got to figure that the TV ratings are going to be sky high just because we haven't had basketball to watch,
At least early on.
The Kings versus the Grizzlies could be the, number 1 game of the year if it was compared to the earlier in the season. They could rival the Lakers and the Bucks and the Lakers and the Clippers games. At least you would expect them to be. And the Lakers and Clippers games, that first Laker and Clipper game, I mean, if that is not the highest ranked game in the history of regular season NBA, counting this as part of the regular season,
as far as ratings are concerned.
Yeah, if that's not the highest rating game ever, I will eat this podcast. It's an impossibility. There are going to be so many eyes on that game.
Okay. Well, I might have to hold you to that as far as eating this podcast is concerned. But okay, we'll make sure we'll cook it into something nice maybe for you. But again, I think it's going to be very highly rated. I agree with you on that. Whether it's going to be the all-time highest rated regular season game, we'll have to wait and see. But there is that great possibility that's there. Remember, there'll be other sports that are
going demand out there.
Well, I mean, if baseball gets its act together, baseball is supposed to be actually starting right around that time as well.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's going to be all the stuff that's going on right around that time at the end of July. Movies are not going to be one of them, it looks like, because movies are getting pushed back. Major movies like Tenet, Mulan, they're all being delayed into August. So that's not going to be a distraction. But yeah, it's going to be something that's very, very interesting to see how this is laid out. Just amazing to see how this is going to be, thought out by the league and how they're going to go ahead and carry and pull this off. I'm still somewhat skeptical to a point on the success of this, because this coronavirus has been a hard thing to go ahead and achieve as far as it's concerned. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it with great anticipation, and I know a lot of fans are as well. And I'm hopeful that all the eyes of the fans out there around the world will be on the Lakers and the Clippers come July 30th. I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of other people as well. And it's just something that I know that a lot of people are very excited about. And I'm hopeful that you won't have to go ahead and eat this podcast.
Me too.
Yes. So before we head on out, my friend, I want to go ahead and cover some things that you talked about. I mean, I know you had some recent articles on medium.com. So if you want to go ahead and share everybody what's been going on there, and then we'll lead that into what's coming up to date for everything that's going on at Lakerholics.net as well.
Well, it's been really an interesting time. We're finally now starting to see traffic get back. People are starting to get interested, and a lot of guys who took vacation from blogging every day with us are back on the site and chiming in. So I wrote an article on Medium and for Lakerholics of how NBA's season restart plan could suggest a blueprint for future seasons. And I've alluded to that a couple of times. And the real trigger for the article was my looking over the Lakers schedule. When you eliminated all of those teams with losing records, those 8 losing teams, all of a sudden the quality of the matchups really became so much better. And I started thinking, well, the league has wanted to split the season into 2, with this mid-season tournament, and talking about different ways of getting revenue and also trying to address that problem that we both talked about several times, which is that the TV ratings were down this year, and we've had that's after a decade of rising ratings. All of a sudden, it was like the league wasn't developing the kind of interest that it had been used to. And so I started thinking about different schemes and basically became enthralled with some of the things that the league was experimenting with in this particular season restart plan. And there are several factors, one being limiting the number of dropping out 8 teams so that you have only 22 teams playing in the last 8 games, which ends up really upgrading the attractiveness of every one of those matchups dramatically. Secondly, there's the play-in tournament, which all of a sudden, adds another wrinkle that we haven't had in the past. It's sort of like putting the wild card game did to baseball. And I think that's a big factor in there. And so I started looking at things like the way that some of the European soccer leagues actually have 2 levels where teams can promote themselves if they win up to the higher level. And if you don't do well, you'll get demoted down to the lower level. And I came up with this scheme of that sort of is a way that the NBA could take the experience that they're getting from the season restart plan that they're implementing now into dramatically changing how the season works. And for example, they could divide the season in half with 30 teams playing each other in the first half, and then a mid-season tournament determining 16 teams that would be in an A division for the second half of the season, and 14 B teams that would play against each other in the second half of the season. And you could do it by giving the top 5 teams in each conference a bye. That would leave 6 teams in each conference. Those 6 teams in each conference could then play across against each other, with the idea being that it's a 7-game series, and whoever loses goes into the B League, and whoever wins stays in the A League. And then the second half of the season, you'd have the 16 best teams playing each other for 41 games. So you would really have great matchups as you finish the season. The B teams, on the other hand, would be playing teams that are sort of equal to each other, and they would have a better chance to have a winning record the second half of the season. And you could then even set it up where the top 2 teams in the B League would end up in a play-in tournament against the bottom 2 teams in the A League, so that they'd have a chance to promote themselves and to get into the regular playoffs. And it's just one idea of that the league could do, and I think we're going to see a lot of things like this being considered. While there's some fans who responded on Lakerholics as looking at it as a gimmick, and it is a gimmick. It's a gimmick the way that the wild card game is a gimmick. It's a gimmick the way that the fourth quarter of the All-Star game was a gimmick, and so forth. But what it does is it increases the quality of the product that the NBA is presenting to its fans. And it involves everybody with a chance to make the playoffs. You have more teams involved and just a lot more action. You all of a sudden have a midseason tournament that has meaning, so that you can really take a pause and really have a lot of action that you wouldn't normally have. So I think that there's a lot of but my whole purpose for writing the article was basically just to get people starting to think about what are the different options the league could do to make it better. And I really like the whole idea of a league that is split in half, where the first half determines who the A and B teams are, and the second half then gives you upgraded quality for the top 16 teams to play each other, so that when you get to the playoffs, you really have, everybody's going to do great in the playoffs. The playoffs have always been it for the NBA. But that 82-game season has gotten longer, it seems, and drearier. And a lot of it, the first part of it, hasn't been very interesting because you're up against NFL football. And the second half of it has ended up with a lot of tanking teams and so forth. And I think the 2-tier approach toward restructuring the second half of the season makes a lot of sense. So it's a fun article. It's on medium.com under LakerTom. And if you want to join in the conversation on Lakerholics.net, we've had a host of people chiming in on what their opinions are, from a great idea to a crazy gimmick that nobody's ever even considered. So anyway, it's something that we've had a lot of fun with. There's a lot of other topics going on the site. So I invite everybody to come in and join in the conversation. If you're an informed fan who cares about basketball and is passionate about the Lakers, it's the perfect place to have some online conversations.
Gee, what are the chances you would throw something crazy out there? They must be very long. I'm also being very facetious. Crazy Tom is at it once again, and you can find out what he's doing today at Lakerholics.net. Be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.net. And I'll tell you what, though, Tom, it's funny because I'm seeing the feedback on Lakerholics.net and all the stuff that is being said, from your Crazy Tom to okay, I kind of agree with you on this, but there's a lot of other things that are being talked about, including J.R. Smith potentially becoming a member of the Lakers. And this has also become a very divisive hot button issue on Lakerholics.net. So I want to hear your thoughts from the feedback that you're getting on JR. Are people digging it, or are people not so digging it? Because I'm seeing a mixture of both.
Well, who would have thought at the start of the season that we would be talking about going into the playoffs and the Lakers would possibly have Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith, along with Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee, Shaqtin' Fool's number one star. So it's, I tell you, the thing I think that everybody sort of feels like about this team right now, and I think it's a pretty universal feeling among Laker fans everywhere, is that when you have a team coached by Frank Vogel and the quality of coaches that he has surrounding him and led by two superstars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, who are all about business, and a roster full of guys that have probably arguably the best chemistry in the league. I don't think anybody's really worried about what J.R. Smith could impact all of that seniority, maturity, and team first approach. I don't think they're worried about Dion Waiters or J.R. Smith being anything to upset the apple cart. I think that, it's not like you're putting them on a team like the Hornets or a team that isn't solid all the way through. So, and I also think too that the leadership and the coaching on this team, if either one of those guys pulls any of the stuff that they might have pulled in the past, they're just going to be gone instantly. They're not going to settle for anything like that. So, in truth, there've been a lot of sort of ironic comments and the joking comments about JR, and just like there were about when the Lakers added Dion. But the truth of the matter is I think everybody on the site understands the kind of team that Rob Pelinka's put together and the kind of leadership they're getting from LeBron and AD, so that nobody's really worried about that. We're hoping that those guys can actually become wild cards for us, the X factors that could really contribute. Waiters, you look at Waiters' shot chart, boy, it's 3-point shots and layups. He's just exactly what we need. And he's a guy who can create his own shot, and he's a pretty good playmaker. And you look at J.R. Smith, he's not afraid to take the last shot. There's always a place on a team for a guy like that. He may not get a lot of minutes. And then the other thing I think that a lot of people are not worried about Avery Bradley is because we've got, everybody keeps talking about I hear all the time how the Clippers supposedly have more depth than the Lakers, and I don't understand that at all. Because in the front court and the back court, the Lakers are stronger and deeper than the Clippers are. The Clippers have a better wing situation because they've got two great wings in PG and Kawhi. But when you look at the depth the Lakers have at the guard position and the depth that they have in the front court at the center and power forward position, I'm not at all worried about, Avery Bradley. We're going to miss his shooting, and he's been hot. He's been red hot the second half of the season. But we got Alex Caruso, and I think Caruso and KCP are the two guys who are going to step in and take a lot of those minutes. And then I think also, they can up Danny Green's minutes a little bit, and I think it'll give Waiters and JR a chance to find the spots and the matchups that make sense for the Lakers to insert them. And either one of them are the kind of guys who can come in there and all of a sudden give you a 20-point game. That's so it's next man up as far as the Lakers are concerned with Avery Bradley, and I think that nobody's worried at all about the Lakers' chemistry or determination to win being at all affected by any crazy antics that Dion or JR could concoct.
And once again, you can be part of that conversation to share your thoughts on Dion Waiters, J.R. Smith, and any one of the Lakers that you choose. You can be part of that conversation and share your thoughts today with other great Laker fans at LakerHolics.net. For us here at the Lakers Fast Break, if you have any questions for us, LakersFastBreak@yahoo.com, or just reach out on us on the Twitter at Lakers Fast Break, or you can reach out to Tom. No, he's not at Crazy Tom. He's actually at LakerTom on Twitter. So you can go ahead and reach out to him there and tell him exactly how you feel about his Medium.com article on the season. Also, you can just share your thoughts on the Lakers season, the Lakers schedule. That's always something great for people to talk about. In fact, they're talking about it right now at LakerHolics.net. So check out all the great things you got there going on today at LakerHolics.net. For us here, If you get a chance also as well and you're into pop culture, we're on our 200th episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture. So check that out on the Pop Culture Cosmos channel. 200 episodes. We just truly appreciate it. Plus, we're on radio worldwide. I also want to thank for the Lakers Fast Break, the RTF Sports Network, and also as well the Discover Community Network for playing our shows, including, like I said, RTF Sports Network that plays us not one, not twice, but 3 times a week now. So we truly appreciate them playing our shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it looks like. So check out them at rtfsportsnetwork.com or the great people at Discover Community Network where they play our awesome shows as well. We're almost up to 100 episodes myself, right here on the Lakers Fast Break. So, I mean, time goes by. Time goes by when you're talking the Lakers. Have I still got you there, Tom?
Yep.
Okay. I was just thought
you're passing it over. I was going to say, I think I'm going to go out and register Crazy Gerald as a Twitter burner account.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's going to be a lot of Crazy Geralds already out there, my friend. So we'll keep it at Crazy Tom. We'll keep it at Crazy Tom. And I'll just say this. I'll just say this. I'll just leave it on this note. It's funny because the other day I was fast asleep and I was actually had those dreams that you have when you can't control them and it just happened. I dreamed I was playing 5-on-5 like I used to play all the time, 5-on-5 on one of the hard courts, and one of my teammates was LakerTom. And even though we won 5 games in a row, I just couldn't make him happy. I'm a guy that just passed the ball. I love passing the ball. I love defending. I love making the plays and all that. But you know what? At the end of my dream, I had LakerTom in my face chewing me out because I didn't shoot the ball. So, you just can't win with Laker Tom. You just can't win.
Well, hey, you can't, if you don't shoot, you can't make a basket, Gerald.
Well, I was hitting layups, but you wanted me to pump it out from outside. Instead, I was just dishing it off.
Analytics, baby, analytics.
You were taking all the shots. I remember. That's all I remember.
I've had that happen in my life.
There you go. Well, see, there you go. Never put us on the court at the same time. There you go. But my friend, it's been great talking to you once again. It's LakerTom. You got to go ahead and be part of the conversation where he's at Lakerholics.net. Check out his great articles today at medium.com. And once again, just continue to look at what we're doing here at the Lakers Fast Break. You can follow us on Lakers Fast Break on Facebook, Lakers Fast Break on Twitter. Check out our great shows that we've had with Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies, Stone Hansen from DraftSite.com, Michael Weisenberg from Perspective Insight, and The Step-In. We've had some great episodes. I'm hoping to have a lot more coming up in the near future right here at the Lakers Fast Break podcast.